Hi guys, Rachel here. I thought I'd pop on real quick and talk about the books that I've read recently and maybe some of the books that I'm still reading. So I haven't done one of these in a while, and I think the last time I caught up with you all in a video that wasn't a tag or something tarot related was early January. So this is basically going to be the books that I've read this year, which isn't too many. So I've been sick and I've been really disoriented in thought. And I took some notes, and I mean, I didn't even read that much, but I just felt like I was trying to talk to my daughter a couple of days ago about something, and I was really struggling. I could not for the life of me find the word for backpack or book bag. I wanted to say laundry basket or washing machine. It's crazy. And I wasn't even that sick. I'm not really sure what's going on, but I might have to, you see me looking down, I'm referring to my notes just so I remember what to say. I didn't even take that many because honestly, it's like, what is it, mid-March? And if I don't start making these videos now, I'll just never do it. So without further ado, let's see. 36 Secrets by T. Susan Chang. I'm not going to talk about this one too much because I know most of you, well, maybe not most of you, but a lot of you are familiar with this. I know a lot of people were reading this. I love T. Susan Chang. I am an avid listener to the podcast that she co-hosted with M.M. Moline. It's a decan or decan, however you want to pronounce it, walk. It takes you through March to March, you know, starting with Aries and ending with Pisces. So it takes you through all of the decans, and she's extremely thorough. And I like that at the end of each decan that she goes over with you, she includes some poetry, all different poets, all different backgrounds, all different generations that she feels suit the decan. That was my favorite bit. So this took me longer to read than I thought it would. I thought I was going to read it according to whatever decan I was in, like actually do a decan walk, and I didn't do that because, like a lot of you, I just got sidetracked with other projects. So what happened was I spent several months not even picking this up because I realized when I was reading it, I just really wasn't paying attention. And I thought that I was really going to love this. And there's nothing wrong with the book. I just honestly wasn't really, at the time, I don't know, I just really wasn't like in tune to esoteric tarot related books for whatever reason. And I know that I'm not alone in that. So I had to catch up. I finished this before March. I think I finished this back in January or February. And I just read a bunch of decans all together. I think I was maybe like 3/4 of the way through it, and I just read them, and I don't know. But this is very good, and I recommend it. I don't know if this is going to be really the best video, but okay, Jack Kerouac, On the Road. I'd actually never read this before. It's kind of unbelievable, right? So this was prompted by BB's beautiful Venus in transit videos, the Venus Sagittarius transit video. I'm all tongue-tied all of a sudden. Hang on a second. So she suggests books in the videos, and I was like, I'm going to read this. So Jack Kerouac, this was published in 1958, I think. Yes, 1958. So a group of young people, they just travel all across the United States, you know, from New York to LA and back again. and hitchhiking and getting into all sorts of scrapes and living, you know, more or less like nomads. And I can totally see a 14-year-old Jim Morrison reading this and being totally influenced by it. But yeah, it's one of those books that helped define the Beat Generation. My favorite passages were the ones in which they were in dirty, crowded nightclubs across the US. All that jazz and swing music of the 1940s, and the way that he writes about the musicians and, you know, the transcending spirit of music is just so exhilarating and euphoric. And you can tell he really lived it. And I'm so jealous. Like that must have been so cool. The 1940s, like the live music scene. Anyway, this I liked more than I thought I was going to. I think that a lot of people in the critic circles like to, I don't know, almost talk down on this, like this is only for young people. I'm not very young, and it reminded me maybe, it reminded me of a few things that maybe I'd forgotten. So it's full of life. It's full of life, and I guess maybe it asks you, are you still alive? I don't know. I mean, you don't have to get, I don't think I would do some of these things in here anymore, but sorry, I'm so, I'm not very well worded. I feel like I say that in like half of my videos, but I get so nervous for some reason. Okay. Yuletide Hauntings. Did I already mention this one? I grabbed a list of the books I read this year, and this was on there. So I think I already talked about this in my last video, but this is just a zine from Hellebore that I really enjoy. And it was about, like, you know, hauntings, like folk hauntings across the, you know, the UK. I don't know. But I love the illustrations and engravings. I don't know if they're actually engravings, but they look like that in here. It's totally my aesthetic. And I actually have a couple of their sweatshirts too. So that's Hellebore Yuletide Hauntings. I read that back in January. Gathering Moss. I read this for my friend Bailey's book club that is, I think it's still open, I believe. I think that the idea was to read this book in February and maybe talk about it in March, but if you want to read the book, I'm pretty sure most of you are friends with Bailey or know Bailey, and I'll try and remember to link that information below to her video, where her introduction video to the book club. But Robin Wall Kimmerer, Kimmerer, is a botanist and director of the Center of Native Peoples and Environment at SUNY ESF, which is Environmental Science and Forestry in, you know, New York, obviously, SUNY. So I love moss. And when Bailey mentioned this book in one of her videos, I was like, there's a book on just moss. Oh my God, I had no idea. Fascinating. So I didn't realize that there were so many different species of moss and that it grows in so many different places and that it's so hardy. And also, it can take many years for a healthy moss bed to develop and thrive. But once it's there, it's astounding. It's a beautiful book. My take away from it is, I guess I wasn't aware of that I wasn't aware that there was such a misconception surrounding moss, of moss being somehow bad. So as I was reading this book, I had lots of questions. I was Googling, as we all do, and I was surprised that I kept being redirected to moss removal. Like, I forget what I was looking up, but I got, for example, all of these Google, the autofills, like, how do you remove moss from trees? And I'm like, why would you want to remove moss from a tree? And all these people were answering the question, and all these tips on how to remove moss from trees. They're just like, oh, it's super easy. Just scrape it off. And I guess the general consensus is that moss on a roof is bad. And I got into this long debate with my boyfriend about it. And it's true. It's like I couldn't find anything on the internet that told me that moss was fine on a roof. Everything was about how bad it is, and all these companies that come and can remove the moss from the roof. And I'm just not sure now after reading this book. So I don't know. It's just, oh, that was my takeaway. I got a little peeved at how, man is so determined to tame nature when we should be just sort of, coexisting. But this is, if you like moss, I feel like I'm on Reading Rainbow. If you like moss, I highly recommend this book, Gathering Moss by Robin Wall Kimmerer. Pardon me. All right, what else did I read? All right, Nabokov, Look at the Harlequins. So this was, Look at the Harlequins was his last published work. I think there were a couple of things that were published after his passing. But this is based loosely on the author's life. Nabokov isn't for everybody. I'm not going to really get into Nabokov right now because I don't want this to be too long. But it's loosely based on his memories, I would say. It wasn't my favorite Nabokov, but there were some passages that were just, breathtaking, like sumptuous imagery, just illuminating thoughts. I don't know. I can't gather my thoughts very well right now, but I guess it was heavy on the self-indulgence, but that's okay. I mean, authors are allowed to be self-indulgent, and some of the best ones have to be able to write so well, to be able to depict things so well. But yeah, this was good. It wasn't my favorite. But there were a couple of passages in here that I'll say I'll probably never forget. So that's Nabokov for you. Night by Edna O'Brien. Now, Edna O'Brien, I think I've mentioned her before on my channel. She's another author who's not for everybody. Brilliant Irish author. I think she's still with us. I think she's in her 90s now. Fascinating life. Like, she was a celebrity in the 1960s. She wrote a screenplay or two. What was it called? Z and Company. It had Elizabeth Taylor and Michael Caine in it. And her stories are often, ugly. Like, they depict like the ugliness of human beings. It's, the nitty gritty of life. She's sort of like, I don't know, maybe a blend of Bukowski and Hemingway, which I always thought like Bukowski was sort of a a more uncouth version of Hemingway. But also James Joyce. If you like James Joyce, you might like this. It's like a stream of consciousness novel, which I love. This just takes you on a journey, or no, let me reword this. This takes place during just one night, but it's the protagonist is what was her name? Mary Hooligan, an Irish woman, and she's just reminiscing about her past while she's trying to go to sleep in bed. She's house sitting for some wealthy couple that went away on vacation. So it's, I don't know. I don't know who I recommend this to, if I recommend it to anybody, but you'd have to look it up yourself to see if this is for you or if it's not for you. But I mean, Edna O'Brien, I plan on reading whatever I can, and maybe a good biography. I mean, yeah, like she partied with like Marlon Brando, and she met Richard Burton. It's pretty cool. And she's a survivor too. So she had a really messy divorce, I think, where her husband tried to take her children away, and yeah, she's like, I'm just warning you, like she's not for everybody. So anyway, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed Night. Okay. Extraordinary Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds. This took me forever to read because, I don't know, I read a lot of books in December and also back in November for Goth Lit November, and then just whatever, I forget what I read. But I had started this back in early November, I believe. And I mean, it's, you know, it's a thicker book. It's like 700 pages, really tiny text. And I finally finished this a few days ago. This I've talked about on my channel before. This was written in 1841 by Charles Mackay. And it's a classic. And it sets out to prove that mass hysteria has always been with us. So let's see. I mean, it catalogs many different examples. Let's just read the back for you. Whenever struck by campaigns, fads, cults, and fashions, the reader may take some comfort that Charles Mackay can demonstrate historical parallels for almost every neurosis of our times. The South Sea Bubble, witch mania, alchemy, the Crusades, fortune-telling, haunted houses, and even tulipomania are only some of the subjects covered in this book, which is given a contemporary perspective through Professor Norman Stone's lively new introduction. So, for example, like tulipomania, which I just mentioned in here, people were going into debt collecting tulip bulbs until one day they were just worthless aside from being beautiful flowers. I learned some things here. I will say that the chapter on the alchemists was way too long for me. It was like almost 200 pages long, and obviously Charles Mackay did not like alchemists, but most of the dudes that he was talking about, they were all claiming that they could make gold, you know, and so they all got invited into these courts of these kings and princes, and because they thought that these dudes could make gold, and then they ended up in prison or ruined. I mean, it got a little boring for me. Yeah, the Crusades was actually pretty good. I didn't think it was going to be that interesting for me because I've read so much medieval history, but I don't know, I learned some things. And the same with the Witch Mania chapter, which is all about, you know, the witch hunting. And I even learned more. I guess I haven't really researched a lot of that, and I didn't realize, wow, like I mean, I knew it was widespread and gruesome, but it was even more so than I had thought. The Tulipomania was just entertaining and interesting. But yeah, this guy, like, I'll give him credit. Like, he really did his research, and maybe some of the facts in here, maybe that I noticed a couple discrepancies in some of, like, for example, some of the historical medieval figures. He got like some of the names sort of wrong, but that's okay. It's okay. I mean, he had a lot of stuff to say. So this was interesting. This was interesting. It just took me too long to read it because, like I said, I was reading so many other books. So what am I still reading? I'm still reading The Mad Woman in the Attic. This is excellent. And I started reading this for Gothlit November, and I paused because I have to read Villette by Charlotte Bronte, and I'm going to do that soon, but I just couldn't because I realized I had like 7 or 8 or maybe even 9 books at one point open all at once. So most of these books that I showed you that I read, I was reading all at once. Maybe not all of them, but about half of them. I'm also still reading, break on through this biography on Jim Morrison. Look at all these tabs that I have in here. It's crazy. I paused in reading this where I didn't read this for like a month. And I'm still reading Read Like the Devil because I was reading it, you know, alongside 36 Secrets and Gothlit November. And as I mentioned before, I just suddenly experienced a disconnect with all books, esoteric and tarot. But lately I've been using my Marseille quite a bit. And so I'm feeling the call to read this because this is a fun read. It's fun. It's not necessarily how I read because you guys know, if you've watched my channel, I don't really read for other people, but this book makes me want to do that because it sounds kind of fun. And then also I'm still working on the Greek magical papyri, and this I've talked about on my channel before as well. So there you have it. Those are the books that I read. And that's it. Okay, bye.